While often called the budget galaxy class, Starfleet's Nebula-class Starship was a real workhorse. In service during the second half of the 24th century, the Nebula-class shared similarities with the top-of-the-line galaxy-class design, but was more versatile, coming in many configurations depending on what Starfleet needed. Since its debut in Star Trek The Next Generation, the Nebula-class has appeared in multiple episodes and series, as well as in various variations of its original design. In today's Star Trek Explained video, we're continuing our series of exploring every starship in a class. This week, welcome to every Nebula-class starship in the Star Trek universe. Now, if you were to command a Nebula-class vessel, what would you name it? Comment your answers down below, and let's see who picked the same name. Welcome to Trek Central, I'm your host, Captain Jack. If you want to keep up to date on the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media for daily updates on the Star Trek universe. Did you know we're enjoying making these Star Trek videos, surprise, on various topics, and we hope you enjoy watching them. If you do want to support their development, please join our Patreon via the link below. You'll get exclusive access to videos and events, as well as more Galaxy class rewards. Seriously, your help is much appreciated. Engage. Red alert! If you're looking for Star Trek starships, action figures, prop replicas, and even things like Klingon mouse pads, our partner site, the Cargo Bay, is now docked and ready. This includes the Nebula-class Starship from today's video, along with starship models like the Prometheus class, Ambassador class, and more. If you're into Star Trek collectibles, head to the Cargo Bay via the link in the description and start exploring. Okay, let's set the scene with an introduction to the Nebula-class Starship. If you already know everything you want to know about the Nebula-class, you can use the YouTube chapter system and skip ahead to the actual ships. Of course, you can check out our full and complete breakdown of the Starship design here on Trek Central, so this will just be a quick overview of the ship design before we get into every known starship. Of course, it is very obvious the Nebula-class had a similar design lineage to the larger Galaxy-class counterpart. Notably, this design language is evident in both the primary and secondary hulls, and in the warp nacelles. Currently, it is unknown in Star Trek canon which design came first, the Galaxy class or the Nebula class. The Nebula class was composed of two hull sections. The saucer-shaped primary hull was mounted atop the secondary hull with two warp nacelles mounted on either side of the secondary hull, directly below the primary hull. This starship design appeared to have modular components, much like the Miranda-class line of starships. Atop the primary hull of the Nebula class was a superstructure that could fit different modules. There was the inclusion of a triangular platform fitted with torpedo launchers, an oval platform, or additional warp nacelles. This would make three variations of a class, however, there is a fourth. By 2375, the Nebula class was reconfigured ever so slightly to include more of the Galaxy class style secondary hull. This was actually due to the production team of Star Trek transitioning from a physical studio model to a CGI filming model. The Starship class was equipped with a huge arsenal, including multiple phaser banks and torpedo launchers. The warp drive systems for a Nebula class had a maximum warp speed of 9.3, eventually being upgraded to warp 9.5 and then later warp 9.9 in later years. During the second half of the 24th century, Starfleet would commission a number of Nebula-class starships. The starship design was active in the 2360s and seemingly continued at least up until the 25th century. However, we do not actually know if the design is still in service during the dawn of the 25th century. The USS Bellerophon, NCC 62048, was active in the 24th century. This Nebula class was deployed in 2366 as part of a Starfleet task force which engaged a Borg cube at Wolf 359. The battle against the lone Borg cube would be known as the Battle of Wolf 359. Alongside the Ambassador-class USS Yamaguchi, the Bellerophon moved to engage the Borg cube. Both ships took the chance while the USS Saratoga was caught in the cube's tractor beam. The Bellerophon was destroyed in the battle, along with 38 other starships. If you're interested in learning more about the starships at the Battle of Wolf 359, check out the full video on the Trek Central channel. It seems the name of the Bellerophon would pass to the Intrepid-class starship, USS Bellerophon, which was in service in 2375, and used as a personal command vessel of Starfleet Admiral William Ross. A Nebula-class ship under the name of USS Bonchoon was active in the 24th century. This starship had the registry of NCC 70915. In 2374, this starship was assigned by Starfleet to pursue the stolen prototype vessel, the USS Prometheus. This followed a new Starship design being commandeered by Romulan agents. While able to catch up and intercept the Prometheus, along with other Starfleet vessels, the Bonchoon was ultimately caught off guard by the Prometheus' unique ability. This was its multi-vector assault mode. The superior firepower of the prototype vessel was able to disable the Bonchoon, forcing it to break off its attack. It appears that in 2378, the Bonchoon was still active. This time, the Nebula-class was stationed in the Sol system. It was part of a fleet that responded to an anticipated Borg incursion. Once that was dealt with, the Bonchoon, along with other Starfleet vessels, escorted the Intrepid-class USS Voyager back to Earth, following its return from the Delta Quadrant via the Borg Transwarp Conduit. The Bonchoon was actually named for Foundation Imaging's visual effects supervisor, Rob Bonchoon. The registry number is actually his birthday. The ship was not identified in dialogue, and its on-screen appearance was the first time a computer-generated effect was used for the ship class, rather than a physical filming model. In 2371, a Nebula class under the name of the USS Farragut and the registry of NCC 60597 was in service to Starfleet. This starship was dispatched to Viridian 3 to rescue the crew of the Galaxy-class USS Enterprise D's saucer section, which had just crash-landed on the planet's surface. This followed a warp core breach and the loss of the Enterprise's engineering section. During the brief Federation-Klingon War that occurred around 2 years later in 2373, the USS Farragut was dispatched by Starfleet Command to assist the colonists of a Federation world. This was Agilon Prime. The colonists had come under attack by Klingons. While the Farragut was en route, the ship was attacked and destroyed near the Lambata cluster. It's unknown if there were any survivors from the attack. In the Star Trek extended novel, The Return, which is written by William Shatner, the USS Farragut was described as having been destroyed over Viridian 3 by a Romulan warship. However, again, this story does take place in Star Trek's extended canon. Like the USS Farragut that appears in the 23rd century, the starship is named after David Farragut, a notable American admiral. In 2374, the Nebula-class USS Honshu was responsible for the transport of Gul Dukat, a former Cardassian leader. With the registry of NCC 60205, the starship was tasked with transporting the disgraced leader to Starbase 621 to stand trial for war crimes. Deep Space Nine's commanding officer, Captain Benjamin Sisko, was also on board and scheduled to testify at the trial. While the voyage was only scheduled for 3 days, the second day saw the Nebula-class attacked by Cardassian destroyers. Unable to defend itself, the Honshu was destroyed. While many lives were lost, 3 escape pods and a Type 6 shuttlecraft were able to escape. Sisko and Dukat were among those who made it off the doomed starship. After receiving news of the Honshu under attack, the USS Defiant and USS Constellation were dispatched to retrieve survivors. The Defiant retrieved 15 crew members and Captain Sisko. Meanwhile, Dukat had stolen the Type 6 shuttlecraft and continued to use it for some time. In the 2370s, the Nebula-class USS Leeds was docked at Space Station Deep Space Nine. The starship had the Federation registry of NCC 70352. The Leeds actually appears in an alternate 2373, where it was once again seen docked at Deep Space Nine. This Nebula class actually appears in the credits of Starship Deep Space Nine, or rather the intro, seasons 4 through 7. Of course, it can be seen docked with DS9. One of the earliest active Nebula-class starships was the USS Lexington. In 2365, the vessel was under the command of Captain Will Toms. It was on assignment for a planetary exploration in Sector 136. Many new graduates of Starfleet Academy would consider the Lexington a fine posting, and as such, it was fiercely competed for. In 2369, Dr. Elizabeth Lenz was assigned to the Lexington as the vessel's new chief medical officer. The Nebula class was assigned to an interstellar charting mission. The USS Enterprise D would rendezvous with the Lexington in 2370 to load supplies for transport to the Tarkano colony. In 2371, the Lexington was docked at Deep Space Nine for shore leave, following the successful completion of its interstellar charting mission. Around this time, the Dominion's founders would create a virtual reality to simulate Deep Space Nine and some of its crew members. In this simulation, Starfleet officer Jadzia Dax was slated to be transferred from DS9 to the Lexington as the vessel's new science officer. As this was a simulation, these events do not actually take place. Years later, when the Battle of Sector 001 took place, the Lexington fought against the Borg Cube in what was officially the second Borg invasion. After the initial battle against the Cube, the Lexington would report at least 96 crew members dead and 22 wounded. By 2401, the Lexington had been decommissioned but was preserved at the Federation Fleet Museum located over Anthem Prime. A Nebula class under the name of USS Merrimack and with the designation of NCC 61827 was active in 2366. The vessel was assigned to personnel transport duties for Starfleet and had the honour of transporting Ambassador Sarek and his aides back to Vulcan. This followed the ambassador's successful conclusion of a treaty negotiation at Lagaro 4. It seems that Merrimack had a fondness for Vulcans, or perhaps the other way around, as in 2367 the vessel was on special assignment for the Vulcan Science Academy. However, the vessel would be assigned to Captain Jean-Luc Picard's fleet in 2368. This fleet successfully blockaded the Klingon-Romulan border during the Klingon Civil War. Picard's plan was to ensure that the Romulans would not take advantage of the Klingons' internal political affairs, basically in an attempt to destabilize the galactic community. The USS Merrimack joined 22 other Starfleet vessels assembled for the fleet, and was one of the 17 chosen for the Tachyon detection network. When the network was disrupted by high energy bursts released by the Romulans, the net was no longer effective in a radius of 10 million kilometers around the Nebula-class USS Sutherland. The Merrimack, along with the fleet, proceeded at maximum warp to Gamma Eridon, hoping to establish the Tachyon network before the Romulans could get there. Later, the Merrimack would transport Starfleet cadet Wesley Crusher back to Starfleet Academy on Earth. Once again, following this, the vessel was on special assignment to the Vulcan Science Academy. This was in 2369. During this year, the Merrimack was active on many missions, and could be seen on various star charts aboard the USS Enterprise D. In some behind-the-scenes information, the initial character bible for Star Trek Voyage's Chakotay suggested he served aboard the Nebula-class USS Merrimack early on in his Starfleet career. The Nebula-class USS Monitor was active in 2366. Under the registry of NCC 61826, the Monitor and the Excelsior-class USS Hood were dispatched to the Romulan neutral zone to counter a potential Romulan sneak attack. The following year would see the Monitor patrolling the Romulan neutral zone. Some could say it was monitoring for any Romulan incursions. It appears this Nebula class was regularly patrolling the neutral zone. Unfortunately for the ship, the Nebula class USS Phoenix became a rather well-known vessel of this class, but not for good reasons. With a registry of NCC 65420, this Nebula class was active in 2367 and under the command of Captain Benjamin Maxwell. Maxwell turned vigilante and used the Phoenix to destroy a Cardassian outpost. The attack was unprovoked and quickly startled both the Cardassian and the United Federation of Planets governments. Neither side wanted to resume hostilities. Captain Maxwell believed that the Cardassians were secretly preparing to renew hostilities, with it only being 1 year after a peace had been settled with the Federation. Starfleet Command dispatched the USS Enterprise D to intercept the Phoenix. Captain Picard moved to intercept Maxwell. While en route to the ship, the Enterprise's sensors revealed that Maxwell was about to use the Phoenix to destroy a Cardassian supply ship. In a desperate attempt to save lives and prevent the destruction of more Cardassian property, Picard gave a nearby Cardassian warship the prefix code for the Phoenix, hoping it would give the Cardassians an advantage in defending themselves. Even with its shield systems offline and taking a direct hit, the Phoenix was still able to destroy the attacking starship with a full spread of photon torpedoes. Eventually, the Enterprise caught up with the Phoenix. Picard ordered Maxwell back to Starbase 211, but during the return trip, Maxwell took the Phoenix off course and headed towards another supply ship. When the Enterprise caught back up, Maxwell demanded Picard search for a Cardassian supply ship. Picard refused, and a standoff ensued. Thankfully, this standoff was eventually defused and ended with no further loss of life. Chief Miles O'Brien was able to beam over and talk down Captain Maxwell. He was taken into custody. Even with the situation resolved, Captain Picard met with Cardassian Gul Macet, who was helping coordinate the situation on behalf of the Cardassian government. Picard did warn Macet that Maxwell's suspicions may have had a basis in truth. Years later, the Cardassians would officially side with the Dominion.
Captain, I assure you.
Take this message to your leaders, Gul Macet. We'll be watching.
A starship under the name of USS Prometheus was a Nebula class active in 2370. This Nebula class had the registry of NCC 71201. In 2370, the Prometheus was docked at Deep Space Nine. The vessel was actually assigned to assist Professor Gideon to reignite the dead star of Epsilon 119. DS9 crew members, Chief Miles O'Brien and Jadzia Dax, were able to increase the maximum warp speed of this Nebula class to warp factor 9.6. This was just in case the mission to reignite the dead star went wrong and caused a supernova. If so, a quick retreat would be required. Following the mission, the Prometheus was once again docked at Deep Space Nine. In 2374, the Prometheus had been succeeded by a new vessel bearing the same name. It is not known what happened to the Nebula-class Prometheus, either it was decommissioned or destroyed on a mission. We simply do not know. The Nebula-class USS Sutherland might be one vessel in this class you remember well. In 2368, the vessel also took part in Captain Jean-Luc Picard's fleet to blockade the Klingon-Romulan border. Due to being under repair at Starbase 234's space dock, the vessel was prematurely deployed, despite the yard's superintendent's belief that it was not ready for launch. Due to a crew shortage, experienced officers from the USS Enterprise D, the fleet's flagship, augmented the Sutherland's crew. Enterprise D's second officer, Lieutenant Commander Data, would transfer as the commanding officer of Sutherland for the duration of the mission. Lieutenant Commander Christopher Hobson was the first officer for the mission. Departing from space dock, the Sutherland was one of 23 vessels Picard scrambled together for his fleet. It was also one of 17 vessels chosen for the tachyon detection grid. During the blockade mission, the Sutherland was hit by a massive tachyon pulse by Romulan forces. This disabled the tachyon detection grid in a radius of 10 million kilometers around the vessel. Commander Data would disobey Captain Picard's orders to regroup at the new location. Instead, he modified the Sutherland's sensors to detect the residual tachyon signature around cloaked Romulan starships. With this change to the sensors, Data was able to expose the Romulan warships using modified, low-yield photon torpedoes.
Didn't you hear? Captain Picard wants us... Fire. Fire!
The mission was a success, and the Romulan forces failed in their plans. Years later, during the mid-2370s, the USS Sutherland was assigned to the Ninth Fleet near Bajor. This was during the conflict known as the Dominion War. The vessel was under the command of Captain Shelby. In mid-2374, the vessel was docked at Deep Space Nine, awaiting to be resupplied alongside other Starfleet starships. It would also be scheduled to revisit the station sometime later. In the 25th century, the Nebula-class USS Sutherland was succeeded by a new vessel called the Sutherland, which resembled the Nebula-class. This is actually the Sutherland class, which is considered a modern successor to the Nebula-class line of starships. A rather unique Nebula class was the USS Tecumseh. This Starfleet vessel was active in the 2370s, under the command of Captain Solok. It had the unique status of featuring an all-Vulcan crew, similar to the vessels USS Intrepid and USS Hera, both of which had predominantly Vulcan crews. During the Dominion War, the Tecumseh had been assigned to 6 months of frontline fighting in 2374 and 2375. Needing repairs and rest for the crew, the Nebula-class visited Deep Space Nine to also overhaul the ship's warp core and inertial dampener systems. This was overseen by Station Chief Mars O'Brien. While docked at Deep Space Nine, several of the ship's crew indulged in Captain Solok's desire to challenge Station Commander, Captain Benjamin Sisko, to the ancient Earth sport of baseball. Sisko and Solok were actually former Starfleet Academy classmates. Solok's team, the Logicians, beat Sisko's team, the Niners. While the USS Tecumseh appears in the DS9 episode, Take Me Out to the Holosuite, the ship's appearance is actually recycled footage of the Nebula-class USS Prometheus, seen in the episode Second Sight. If you're wondering about the name of this vessel, it seems the Enterprise novel, Beneath the Raptor's Wings, included a possible namesake. This was a Vulcan scientist known as Tecumseh, who was stationed on the planet Berengara 7 in 2155. Several Nebula-class starships appear in the extended canon of the Star Trek universe. By extended canon, we mean media types such as video games, comics, novels, and more. Let's explore some of these. The Nebula-class USS Aldebaran appears in the Starfleet Corps of Engineers ebook, War Stories. It was dispatched as part of a task force in 2374 to retake the Setlik system from Dominion forces. In 2376, the vessel was under the command of Captain Robinson and would be assigned to support Deep Space Nine. Unfortunately, the Aldebaran was destroyed by rogue Jem'Hadar vessels who had hoped to reignite the conflict with the Alpha Quadrant. The wreckage of this Nebula-class ship caused the Bajoran wormhole to open every few hours. These events take place in the DS9 Avatar novel, Book 2. The following Nebula-class starships appear in the Star Trek Armada video game series, either in the first or second game. The USS Aristotle, USS Barclay, USS Bell, Boyle, Constew, Crick, Curry, Descartes, Douglas, Edison, Albert Einstein, Euclid, Faraday, Fermi, Foucault, Galileo, Gödel, Gates, Hawking, Hegel, Hubble, Jacobus, Knuth, Kohner, Kelvin, Newell, Newton, Noble, USS O'Neill, USS Oppenheimer, USS Pascal, Pasteur, Pavlov, Pythagoras, Salk, Schrödinger, Schwirtz, Tesla, Thomas Hill, Tawanda, Whitney, and finally the USS Zimmerman. That's a long list, and I probably pronounced some of those wrong, but still, go play Star Trek Armada. A Nebula class under the name of USS Caddy Boston appeared in Star Trek Armada 2, specifically the mission There and Back Again. Under the command of Captain Wright, the vessel travelled through a transport portal in Masaldron star system to the Delta Quadrant as part of a Starfleet battle group. This was a counter-offensive to the Borg invasion of 2377. The Caddy Boston would evacuate Starfleet forces from the Delta Quadrant and receive aid from the USS Enterprise E. In the Star Trek The Next Generation video game, Bridge Commander, the Nebula-class USS Berkeley was a science vessel under the command of Captain Elizabeth Haley. In the year of 2378, it was assigned to investigate the area around the Vesuvius vent, but was unable to penetrate the thick dust clouds surrounding it. While inside the dust clouds, the Berkeley was attacked and badly damaged by a Kessock vessel. Thankfully, the vessel survived the encounter and made it back to Starbase 12, but did have to be towed back by the Nebula-class USS Nightingale. The USS Hawking, which we mentioned earlier, also appears in Bridge Commander along with the USS Kittimer. The USS Berkeley actually goes on to appear in Star Trek Online as one of several vessels patrolling around the Sol system near Earth's space dock. In the video game of Star Trek Legacy, the USS Scott is featured as a Nebula class. Additionally, the USS Ulysses is featured in the video game Starfleet Command 3, but it seems the vessel was decommissioned as the Galaxy class USS Ulysses later appears in the video games of Star Trek Armada and Armada 2. A Nebula class under the name of USS Darwin was active in the late 2360s. By this time, the vessel was completely manned by members of a Horta species, and commanded by a Captain Dalen. In 2370, the vessel would assist the Galaxy class, Enterprise D, in exploring the Dyson sphere that the flagship had previously discovered the year prior. By the way, if you remember the episode, comment it down below. This was also told in the Next Generation novel, Dyson Sphere. The Darwin would go on to appear in Star Trek Armada 2, being involved in a fight against the Borg invasion of 2377. The following Nebula-class starships appear in the Next Generation video game, Birth of the Federation. The USS Alnwick, USS Boracay, USS Bostwick, Chantilly, Chatelaine, Chin, Conklin, Tyson Ning, Jasmine, Lancaster, USS Mayan, USS Mingshen, USS Oakham, USS Oxford, USS Stafford, and the USS Tintagel. A Nebula class under the name of USS Bonham Richard would appear in the Decipher RPG module, Starfleet Operations Manual. In 2368, this vessel participated in an operation with the intent of breaking up Ferengi pirates near Canopus. By the 2370s, the vessel was no longer active in service. In the same RPG module, the Nebula class USS Bonneville appears, along with the USS Chesapeake, USS Endeavour, USS Gallant, USS Himoi, USS Jasor, USS Caradon, USS Leopard, Proxima, and the USS Temeraire. The USS Gardu, a Nebula class, was docked at Deep Space Nine in 2371, during the episode Shakar. However, it is not seen or actually mentioned in the episode. Instead, the vessel is only mentioned in the script. The script mentions that the vessel should be represented by stock footage of the USS Prometheus from Second Sight, a common occurrence in DS9 and many Star Trek shows. The prototype of the class was the USS Nebula. It appears in the Decipher RPG module, Starfleet Operations Manual, as well as the Starships module. We don't actually hear any more of the USS Nebula in Star Trek. In the Star Trek Typhon Pact novel, Rough Beasts of the Empire, the Nebula-class USS New York is placed under the command of a recently returned Captain Benjamin Sisko. This was during the Borg invasion of 2381. Sisko was ordered to protect the planet Avalonis, alongside Starfleet's USS Cutlass and USS James T. Kirk. The New York went into combat with inexperienced officers and would face off against 6 Borg cubes. Ultimately, while the Borg suffered the loss of 4 cubes, they were able to save the New York and Kirk, while destroying the Cutlass. The vessel would eventually be repaired and return to operation. The Nebula-class USS Ranger would be mentioned in a few Star Trek novels. Most notably, it featured in the Destiny novels Gods of Night, where it was placed under the command of Peter Prochal. During the Borg invasion of 2381, the Ranger was defending the iconic planet of Kittimer along with fellow Starfleet vessels USS Constant and USS Zorimifi. While the Enterprise E was able to alert the vessels to an incoming Borg cube, there was little these 3 ships could actually do. However, the Ranger had an advantage. It seems Starfleet equipped this Nebula class with a molecular phase inverter, which Paschal intended to use against the Borg. While not designed as a weapon, the commanding officer ordered the Ranger to make use of a phase inverter to bring the Ranger out of normal space-time and pass through the Borg shields, before phasing back into normal time and self-detonating the entire loadout of quantum torpedoes. While most of the crew agreed, one officer refused the order and was stunned by the first officer. The Ranger proceeded to complete the mission, destroying itself and the Borg cube in the process. In the Next Generation novelization of the episode Descent, the Nebula-class USS Saladin was commanded by Captain Harlock when it was destroyed by rogue Borg led by the android known as Lore. We also know the Nebula-class USS Reston. It seems this Nebula-class is actually this ship in Star Trek First Contact, though it's not been confirmed in canon, as we'll discuss later. During the Battle of Sector 001, it seems Borg drones overcame the crew and would assimilate the starship. Years later, in 2380, the vessel was found abandoned and adrift in the Corso Spans by Nicholas Locarno and a band of privateers. This is a good story known as Revenant from the Seven Deadly Sins novella. Go read it, it's quite fun. The USS Z Magnes was featured in the TNG Slings and Arrows ebook. The same ship also appears in Star Trek Armada 2. Finally in this section, we have the USS Discovery, a Nebula class active in the late 2360s. The vessel is featured in the last Unicorn RPG module, Star Trek The Next Generation core gamebook. Going back to Star Trek canon, 4 starships are potentially Nebula-class vessels, but they are unknown. These are the USS Endeavour, USS Hera, USS Proxima, and USS Ulysses. The Hera was actually part of a story for the Next Generation episode Interface. In that year of 2370, the Hera was under the command of Captain Silver LaForge, with a crew which featured mostly Vulcans. This Nebula class mysteriously vanished while on a transport run. While Starfleet mounted a massive search, nothing was ever found. It was presumed destroyed and lost of all hands. In 2383, the crew of the Galaxy class USS Challenger, which was under the command of Captain Jordan LaForge, son of Silver LaForge, found evidence that the Hera had been transported into deep space by a form of natural quantum slipstream. While the Challenger was able to rescue several survivors and pull the Hera back to Starbase for repairs, Silver had died on a planet that the crew had settled on. These events are told through the Next Generation novel Indistinguishable from Magic. Years later, in Star Trek Online, which is in the 25th century, and in its own storyline, Captain Akira Sulu would inform Starfleet Command that the Nebula-class Hera was destroyed by Orion pirates on a survey mission. By 2409, the Hera was an older starship and unfortunately no match for Orion pirates. We categorize the USS Hera under unknown ships simply as the class has not been confirmed in the canon of the Star Trek universe. During the TNG episode it is mentioned in, it is never confirmed what class of ship the Hera actually is. The Star Trek Encyclopedia, 4th edition, mentions that the Hera was a Nebula class. Expanded books and games have since used this to place the Hera as a Nebula class vessel. Okay, we need to talk about the USS Melbourne. This is technically a Nebula-class starship, but is up for debate. In Star Trek lore, it appears that the Nebula-class USS Melbourne is retconned from Star Trek canon. Let's explain. In The Next Generation, we see the wreck of a battle-damaged Nebula-class USS Melbourne, NCC 62043. This wreck model was seen in both The Next Generation, The Best of Both Worlds, and then in DS9's Emissary episodes, which shows the actual Battle of Wolf 359. However, in Emissary, the name of the USS Melbourne is given to an Excelsior-class starship. When the 4th edition of the Star Trek Encyclopedia was published in 1994, it revealed there were actually 2 starships called Melbourne. Given the production team had a better model of the Excelsior from Star Trek III The Search for Spock, the decision was made to use that as the Melbourne. A short story named Trust Yourself When All Men Doubt You established that the Nebula-class USS Melbourne was still under construction by the time of the Battle of Wolf 359. However, it was scheduled to replace the aging Excelsior-class USS Melbourne. When William T. Riker is offered command of the Melbourne, Starfleet is actually offering him the Nebula-class, not the Excelsior-class. Given that Starfleet was caught off guard, the Nebula-class Melbourne was launched ahead of schedule by Yard Supervisor Thomas Halloway when the Borg attacked. Both the Melbournes were lost at Wolf 359. Star Trek Online seemingly backs up this story justification. At the in-game Wolf 359 memorial, the Nebula class is identified as a PCU Melbourne. This actually stands for Pre-Commissioned Unit. It's given a registry of NCC 78256. We've also got several unnamed Nebula-class vessels which appear throughout the Star Trek universe. Again, one of these appears at the Battle of Wolf 359. You can see the wreck of this Nebula-class near the Borg cube when the Saratoga is destroyed. Again, this scene is on fire when the Enterprise D arrives at the site of the battle. Some believe this is the Melbourne, others believe it is an entirely different ship. It's up for debate still. In Star Trek canon, it's never been confirmed. It seems that what is left of this Nebula class is actually stored at the surplus depot, Z-15, in the orbit of Quailor 2. This is seen in the Next Generation episode, Unification. The reasoning behind this is that the footage of the vessels is a reuse of footage from the Wolf 359 debris field. In the alternate timeline of 2372, an unnamed Nebula class is seen pursuing the runabout USS Yellowstone. The runabout was actually stolen by Harry Kim and Tom Paris. The captain of this unknown Nebula class would hail both crew members and ask them to stand down and surrender the vessel. Given that this Star Trek Voyager episode was filmed after the movie of Star Trek Generations, it is presumed that the film model would have carried the USS Farragut name and registry. During the Battle of Sector 001, we can see a Nebula-class Starship joining the assault on the Borg cube and firing torpedoes. While not noticeable on screen, it could be possible that this vessel is the USS Lexington, referencing communications chatter during the engagement. However, this has not been confirmed. It's also possible that this is the USS Endeavour, which is referenced in the Star Trek Encyclopedia, 3rd edition. In 2373, an unnamed Nebula-class ship was docked at Deep Space Nine, having transported passengers from Earth, including Dr. Lewis Zimmerman and the Bashirs. Again, this was actually reused footage from a USS Prometheus. In 2374, we see an unnamed Nebula-class stationed near Deep Space Nine. This follows Operation Return. The vessel is parked here alongside the USS Defiant, USS Jaeger, and the Excelsior-class USS Farragut. Two unnamed Nebula-class starships would participate in the Second Battle of Jintoka. Both were destroyed in a battle after Breen forces allied with the Dominion deployed the devastating energy-dampening weapon. Both of these vessels were CGI models of the Nebula-class and had no names or registries on the hulls. During the closing of the Dominion War, two unnamed Nebula-class vessels would take part in the Battle of Cardassia. Following the battle, these ships waited with other Federation, Klingon, Romulan and Cardassian starships to launch an offensive against Dominion forces on and in orbit of Cardassia Prime. During the Star Trek Voyager final episode, we see the Nebula-class USS Bonshun escorting the Intrepid-class USS Voyager back towards Earth. However, we also see 3 starships of a Nebula-class design stationed near the Sol system. These were among others dispatched by Starfleet Admiral Owen Paris to a defense point near the planet. None of these vessels are identified by name. In the free-to-play MMORPG video game of Star Trek Online, the Nebula-class is a playable starship that captains can take command of. It's designated as an advanced research science vessel, and is available to play ranked commander or above. The ship, much like its on-screen counterpart in the Next Generation, can create tachyon detection fields, which enhance stealth detection and the vessel's sensor capabilities. A special thanks to the mod of Star Trek Armada 3 for Sins of a Solar Empire Rebellion. We've used our own gameplay footage of some of the content in this video, but you can find a link to that mod in the video description below. Red alert! For Star Trek ships, figures, collectibles, check out our partner site, the Cargo Bay, now docked and ready, including the Nebula class from today's video. Hit the link in the description and explore. So that is every known Nebula class starship in the Star Trek universe. Now, did you answer our question at the start of this video? If you were to command a Nebula class vessel, what would you name it? Comment your answers down below, and let's see who picked up the same name. Like always, if you want to keep up to date on the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media or join our community Discord server. A big thank you to everyone who supports us on Patreon. Your support allows us to continue making these Galaxy class videos. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper, my friends. Goodbye.